to the latest in-depth report regarding the ongoing rise of fintech in Europe by Robin Waters, founding editor of Tech.eu. Robin is a seasoned technology journalist, analyst, keynote speaker, and event curator, as well as the founding editor of Tech.eu, the premier source of European tech news, data analysis, and market intelligence. He was formerly the European editor of the Next Web, and before that, a senior editor at TechCrunch. Robin is also one of the co-founders of P-Central, the digital campus located in Brussels Central Station that has helped thousands of people learn technologies, grow a startup, and have a positive impact on society. I'm excited, aren't you? So Robin, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much. I hope everyone can hear me. Antonia Panis, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm delighted to join you here for the Cyprus FinTech Summit. Coming here to you live from one of my kids' bedrooms here in Brussels, Belgium. I've been locked up in between those walls a bit too long, and I guess that's for everyone. So I'll keep it as brief as possible. With your permission, I'll share my screen so we can jump straight into the presentation. There we go. Let me just go full screen. There we go. Antonia has already provided us with a very, very nice introduction. So I'll keep it very brief on Tech.eu. We're a data and a media company, of course, focused on the European technology industry. We're a source of information indeed. It's mostly news. Let me just a second. So we basically deliver news, data, market intelligence to anyone who's professionally interested in the European technology sphere. Hold on, let me just. Panis Antonio, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed, we can.
Okay, sorry, because it says sharing is paused, and I could see.
We have the first page though. Is the Tech.eu data and media company?
Perfect. Okay, sorry for the interruption. So that was very briefly about Tech.eu. We deliver data in intelligence, as you can see. Really sorry. Zoom is usually a bit more responsive. Now we're good. So we deliver data, we run advertising campaigns, we do events, we help with events as well. And we also sometimes partners with EU projects. So that's just to give you some context on the company. Now let's talk about what you're actually here for, the state of European FinTech. A little bit of context, this is all based on a report that we just released in January in collaboration with investment group Finstar, based in Russia, but investing all over the world. We have analyzed 4 full years of data, so from 2017 until the end of last year, 2020. So that's 4 years full of data on funding, exits, and whatnot related to the European technology industry. Of course, we can only analyze deals that are disclosed when it comes to size and the rounds that are actually publicly announced. So take that into account. Also take it into account when we talk about European FinTech, we actually include places like Turkey, Russia, Israel, and also the Balkans, etc. So we're very welcoming and open-minded at Tech.eu, so we include those in our research. But first, before we jump to the numbers, we are going to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is, of course, that it was a really big year for European FinTech last year, but of course 2020 will always be remembered as the year of the coronavirus pandemic. So before we start diving into the numbers, I wanted to share some context on how COVID-19 and the lockdowns and the travel restrictions and whatnot have actually affected the European FinTech industry and actually the global FinTech industry as a whole. So as we saw, when countries go into lockdowns on various levels, when you have travel bans and restrictions, there's less things to spend on. That has been very clear from the beginning. When you have less things to spend on, savings rates spike. The demand for loans, especially mortgages, declines. But what we've also seen last year is that there was an immense increase in e-commerce. So that results in a very big increase in us online shopping, paying for things in online banking, loaning, trading, and so on. There's also a growing interest, as you can probably tell from the last few weeks as well, in cryptocurrencies and blockchain-based assets, which is also sort of a result of the COVID-19 crisis. It's not good for everyone, of course. It puts a lot of pressure on insurers and their underwriters. But what is good is that it's not just about startups. It's the entire industry is now going through what I would say an accelerated wave of digital transformation, which also helps a lot of the industry players that help the legacy companies in this space sort of make that transition to a cashless future. There are also rapid advancements when it comes to the infrastructure, the connectivity, open banking and core banking, the security side of things, and so on, which is of course very important if a sector is growing fast, that you take all of the elements into account. Europe has generally very fintech-friendly regulation, which I think was a really crucial aspect in making sure that they didn't have too much of a negative effect last year with the COVID crisis. In fact, what we will see in the numbers is that most of the fintech companies have actually benefited from the crisis. Of course, that doesn't go for everyone. If you deliver in-store payment terminals, for example, or if you deliver financial services specific to business travelers, just as a few examples, then you are really not in a good place right now. But we've seen a lot of growth in a number of areas. I think the obvious one is online payment processors, but also credit loan marketplaces, the buy now, pay later solution providers like Klarna and whatnot, user-friendly applications that help people do banking and trading, whether it's on a personal basis or for business, crypto exchanges, and the list goes on and on and on. So now that we've tackled the elephant in the room, let's jump to the numbers. This is sort of an overview of what the fintech investments in Europe look like when it comes to the total size and the number of funding rounds. As you can see on the left, we have almost hit 10 billion euros in total funding going to fintech in 2020, which is a record year, but it wasn't that much bigger than 2019. But then, of course, 2019 was absolutely a record year compared to the 2 years before. So you can see that growth has really, really started in 2019, and it has continued all the way into last year. And from what we've seen, even in the first few weeks of January, that's a trend that I think is going to continue.
Robin, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but it seems that the screen is frozen, and I'm so sorry for that.
Oh, sorry. And where are we now?
We're still on the cover page.
Oh, seriously?
Yes, for some reason it's frozen.
Yeah, so that's why it says sharing is paused.
But we do enjoy your speech so far quite well, because I totally agree with you that we are in an era of accelerated wave of digital transformation. I mean, we see things that were supposed to happen gradually, but they are already accelerated.
So apparently it's because I'm on full screen. So thank you for highlighting that, whoever
well, thank you so much.
Did that. So I'm gonna try and go away from that just a second. Okay, let's try it this way. Can you see my screen now?
Not yet.
Super sorry. Let's try again.
It's all right. All right. Now it starts working.
I'm guessing now you can see my full screen. We'll just have to work with what we got. So I started talking about TechEU. This is sort of an overview of what we do. This was the elephant in the room. I'm sure we can get the slides to everyone afterwards, so we don't have to cycle through it again. But I was talking about the numbers. So if you look at the main chart, this is where you can sort of see the growth when it comes to funding, at least going to European fintech companies. A massive increase in the number of rounds compared to 2018 and 2019, but also quite an increase in total investment size based on the numbers from 2017 and 2018. So 2019 was absolutely a record year, quite an amazing year, and you can see that 2020 has even delivered growth, not a lot, but even based on the record year 2019 is quite an achievement for the industry. This is the number of rounds and the way that they've sort of evolved. You can see that roughly it's 369 or 370 deals per year on average, which means almost one per day, so to speak. But you can see that the number of rounds hasn't really gone up by that much. And that means that the deal size is basically increasing. So we don't see a massive spike in the number of companies getting funded, but the total funding size is growing tremendously. So that also means that the average deal size is growing quite a lot. These are numbers from 2017 to 2019, so it doesn't include 2020, just so you know. But even then, from 2018 to 2019, you can see a massive spike when it comes to both the mean and the median funding. So the average deal size has increased tremendously over the last 2 years. You can also see this when you look at the half-yearly figures of the stages. We were sort of expecting the early stage startups to have a bit of a decline in funding, especially in 2020 with the COVID crisis. But when you look at the actual numbers, that is not the case. So there are monster rounds of funding and they get all the headlines, the Checkout.coms and the Klarnas and the Monzos and the Revoluts. But the reality is that there is a very healthy undercurrent of fintech startups that are also getting funded and going through the growth stage. And you can see the growth trend line as well is growing quite a lot. So funding across stages is growing. When you look at the geography, I think it's not much of a surprise that the UK is driving the market. When it comes to the number of fintech rounds, you can see the difference quite clearly with the other big economies, Germany, France, and Spain in particular. Sweden, always a bit of an outlier in European tech, small country doing big things, so they're always in the list of top 5. Now, this is the number of funding rounds. Of course, we can also look at the total funding size. And then the UK's dominance shines through even more. As you can see, British fintech startups have raised almost 13 billion euros over the last 4 full years in total, which is more than the next 5 combined. So you can see that UK fintech is still very much wearing the crown, even though there is a lot of growth across the board, even in smaller countries like Belgium and Italy and Switzerland. When it comes to the actual companies raising funding, Wirecard is still in there. My apologies. Of course, they've collapsed in the meantime. But of course, they did raise the funding in those 4 years that we've analyzed. So we've included them in the list. But you can recognize all those names: Klarna, Revolut, TransferWise. I don't think that's much of a surprise that these are the companies that have attracted the most funding in the time that we've analyzed the data. Klarna was the most valued private fintech company in Europe until very recently. So in January 2021, they were surpassed actually by Checkout, which isn't reflected in this list because we stopped the analysis at the end of last year. But you can see nothing lasts forever. Klarna only held the title for about 6 months. So things are changing quite fast. Now, maybe for the fintech startups in the audience, these are the investors that have been the most actively backing fintech startups across Europe. Index Ventures, which has invested in the likes of Revolut and Funding Circle and Adyen, etc. Very specialist investors as well. Anthemis is one of them. SBI Group, you can see Crowdcube in there, which is a crowdfunding platform. So it's quite a diverse group of investors backing these scale-ups in fintech in Europe. Where are these investors located? In the UK, of course, number one, but also quite interesting to see that the American investors are really taking note of the surge in fintech activity here in Europe, and they are playing a more and more active role in backing, especially the late-stage companies in European fintech, to make sure that they don't miss out on the action. Then, when it comes to exits, then the numbers are actually not as growing as they are when it comes to funding. Of course, this is actually a result of the former. When companies raise bigger rounds and they raise more private capital, their need to get acquired or their need to get to the public markets through an IPO, of course, decreases because they have the capital to grow and they have the resources to do it on their own. But you can clearly see that in the numbers. The more funding goes to fintech companies in Europe, the less they get acquired, and also the less they do an IPO or merger. This is the number of exits through time. The next chart actually shows the value. So even there, you can see very clearly that even if there are acquisitions, the total value of the acquisition has been consistently going down from 2017 to 2019 at least. And we saw the same trend in 2020. It's not reflected in this chart, but just so you know, that trend hasn't changed. So when it comes to the type of exits that we see in fintech, it's usually acquisitions. Almost 90% of companies that have an exit in the fintech space get acquired, so they'll don't necessarily IPO. There are big acquisitions like iZettle, for example, by PayPal, and there are big IPOs like Adyen, for example, in 2018. But those are sort of the exception rather than the rule. Where are the companies that exit usually located? Again, these are the top countries when it comes to tech in Europe, when it comes to funding. So it's almost evident that the same goes for exits. It's usually the UK, it's Germany, it's always Sweden in there. France, for the amount of fintech funding actually going to startups, is relatively low when it comes to exits, but it's a trend that I think will reverse, and I think they'll be very quick to enter the top 5 in the next 2-3 years. I guess that's all the data that I have. I don't know if I actually made it in 10 minutes with the screen sharing problem, but these are my contact details. It's Robin Waters at Robin Waters. It's like Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, it's all the same. And you also have my email address there if you want to reach me for any reason. Panis and Antonio, I don't know if you can deliver the slides to the entire audience, but I'd be very happy to share the presentation with everyone.
Thank you so much. It was indeed an amazing presentation with a lot of insights in such a short time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I know that you're open for questions, so you have already shared your contact details. So we will be more than happy to share it with our audience. So Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you for inviting me. And I will stick around for the next 10-15 minutes to make sure I didn't miss any of the questions in the chat. So thank you.
Thank you. Ciao, ciao. So now we are ready to go to our next speaker, to our keynote talk with Mr. Kyriakos Kokkinos. Mr. Kokkinos is a Deputy Minister to the President for Research, Innovation and Digital Policy since March 1st, 2020. He previously served as the Chief Scientist for Research and Innovation for the Republic of Cyprus, Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Research and Innovation Foundation, and member of the National Board of Research and Innovation. He is a distinguished professional with 30 years of experience in executive management, technology and business consulting, served at senior executive roles in global corporations such as IBM, Executive Director and Partner, and PwC. He also served at the board of directors of many organizations, including Invest Cyprus on the Cyprus Investment Promotion Agency, the Cyprus Tourism Organization, the Cyprus Port Authority, and the Board of Trustees of the Cyprus Institute. He is the recipient of numerous awards and recognitions for professional excellence, including the Business Leader of the Year Award 2016 by Cyprus Chamber of Commerce and the Quality Leader Award 2015 by Cyprus Quality Association. His academic qualifications, of course, include Executive MBA in Strategic Marketing from Henley Management College, MSc in BSc in Electrical Engineering from the New Jersey Institute of Technology in USA, and Mr. Kokkinos will share the government plans to update the public services in the year 2021. What e-government services will they update employment and innovation plans? So, Mr. Kokkinos, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Antonia. Good afternoon to everyone. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with you my ministry's ambitions and plans on how Cyprus can become a regional hub for sciences and technology, and especially on the fintech sector, for the reasons that I will explain. And I hope that on the next presentation of Robin, Cyprus will also be on the high ranking of his list that he shared with us. Can everyone see me and listen to me?
Yes, yes.
Good. I will share my presentation. Let me just give me a moment. Okay. Right, can everyone see the deck now? Antonia, can you confirm that?
Confirm. Yeah, yes, indeed.
Great, all right, okay. So, probably it's the first time that I will be sharing with audience the plans that we have been working in the ministry for the past 4 months. on a very ambitious plan for taking Cyprus to the next level of its high-tech industry as a regional technology and sciences hub. It is something that has been concluded last week internally, and now we are in the process to share this with the stakeholders for receiving feedback on the way forward. So I will share with you some of the highlights of this approach. But let me start by sharing with you the real mission of this ministry. The ministry is a ministry for research, innovation, digital policy, and telecommunications. So we have 4 pillars. At the center, though, of our activity, of our way of working, is we are at the service of our citizens, and our mission is to work on the competitiveness of the country, on the social prosperity of our citizens, and how to position Cyprus high on the map of digital economies, leveraging on our key assets. And our key asset in Cyprus is our intellectual capital, it's our people. So this is the vision and the mission statement of my ministry. We want to build a knowledge-based digital economy in society supported by modern, efficient, and reliable structures. And these are our key drivers or enablers for sustainable growth, competitiveness, and social prosperity. Now, the exercise that we are working for the past 4 months is how Cyprus can become a regional high-tech and sciences jurisdiction. This will be a basic pillar, a new basic pillar of our economic model. And we're not starting from zero. I mean, the Cyprus is already recognized as a fintech and high-tech center, just in a town in Cyprus, just in Limassol. There are more than 8,000 ICT professionals, expats, primarily serving the fintech industry. Cyprus is a gateway into and out of the European Union. So for regions like countries like Israel or Middle East or North Africa, it's one of the best places to live, innovate, and work for the fintech industry. We're a regional base for the delivery of high-tech services already, and we are creating a sandbox for new emerging technologies such as blockchain, artificial intelligence, big data, and others that I will explain as we move forward. And of course, Cyprus has an excellent track record on the quality of the research and development investments, and as well as for software development. So, what do we put into our sandbox for convincing international players, from startups to mainstream high-tech players and fintech players, to trust Cyprus for their work, for their innovation center, the place to live and the place to be? First of all, we are revisiting the institutional environment. That means our regulatory playing field. The fiscal policies, including taxation, work permit, immigration, provisions and policies, and the naturalization process. We're already ranking among the top in Europe, but we are even taking one bold step further to refine this regulatory environment and framework even further. And of course, the business landscape, the innovative entrepreneurship and transformation readiness of the country is something on the mandate of my ministry, and there are specific policies, instruments, and other initiatives in place that are already taking place. Let me admit a weakness that we have: the talent pool. No matter how good and how hard we try, shortage of talent, it's a common challenge for every geography, and Cyprus is no exception. So we are embarking onto a new upskilling and reskilling of professionals program, locals and expats, so that they become fit for the high-tech industry and the fintech industry. And in this context, we are collaborating with our higher education institutions, as well as we are making provisions for specific programs for the industry per se. With the higher education industry, as well as with our high school systems, we are aligning our educational curricula with market needs. This is a challenge, I believe, for the whole of Europe, for all the countries across Europe. But in Cyprus in particular, despite the fact that more than 75% of our high school graduates go for a university degree, most of them, 80% of them, they end up with a graduate, a master's and or a PhD degree. We are still have a talent shortage challenge to face. The third aspect is the infrastructure, the telecom infrastructure, the broadband connectivity, the technology connectivity, but also there are other infrastructure challenges that we need to address, like the cost of housing is rising and makes Cyprus not as competitive as other geographies. The urban infrastructure, we are embarking into a smarter cities strategy, and the ecological sustainability of a country that is less than 1 million population, but accommodates more than 4 million visitors every year, and there are more than 200,000 expats living in Cyprus as workers, knowledge workers, or even semi-skilled workers. And of course, business and market sophistication needs to also be continuously, kept polished and shining for gaining the trust of the fintech companies and all the technology companies that we want to go on. That takes us to the next slide, which is, okay, but what is your digital readiness? How is government approaching the digital transformation? Because it's an essential prerequisite for being trusted by a high technology company to trust Cyprus. They want to interact with the public sector in the most digitally advanced approach. So very shortly, digital signature has been announced last year. Our judicial system is being supported by a new project that has been already launched for interacting with our courts. There is a to-do list of 160 vital public services that we are producing through a new framework that we call it Digital Services Factory. And all our practices are being driven towards a citizen-centric approach. And of course, on the other side, we have the mega projects that I will not spend time to explain. These are projects in the order of 300 million euros. The human capital challenge that I mentioned before is on top of our priority as a ministry, and we're collaborating with the Ministry of Education, but also with the Ministry of Labor for the upskilling of our professional and young graduates, promoting innovation entrepreneurship through the Research and Innovation Foundation, which is under my ministry. And of course, we are revamping our science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education curriculum. The efforts, as you are probably aware, the ministry, it's a new ministry. This ministry has started just 11 months ago, and is the first time that we have a ministry dedicated on innovation and digital transformation. In a very short period of time, as you have seen, as you can see from this, your international innovation scoreboard, the global innovations leaders, Cyprus is second after Israel in our region. It's Israel, Cyprus, and then it's United Arab Emirates. And we aspire to be one of the top in Europe as well. Let's come now to the high-end emerging technologies that are essential prerequisites and is a backbone of a fintech company. Blockchain, and artificial intelligence and competencies around agile methodology of application development and cybersecurity, and all these are high on our agenda. For the blockchain specifically, we are submitting to the Parliament next month a very attractive and very robust, and probably I dare to say one of the most comprehensive legislation to be approved by the Parliament, which will be used as our framework for attracting fintech companies interested in cryptocurrency and DLT. And in fact, the public sector is already engaged on use cases with DLT, which is part of our blockchain national strategy. Same approach on artificial intelligence. We're a bit behind here because blockchain is, the strategy is already implemented, and it's just the legal framework that needs to be approved. We are working with external consultants on our artificial intelligence strategy. And of course, we're also promoting the connectivity and the broadband enhancement and satellite communication enhancements because Cyprus is an island, but when it comes to digital, Cyprus cannot be and is not an island through telecommunications. A chart from the European Blockchain Observatory reported in November 2020. As you can see here, Cyprus is among the most mature and advanced countries, both in terms of regulatory maturity as well as in terms of ecosystem maturity. And this is because of our commitment on this domain. As I said before, advanced infrastructure and sustainability, 5G has been licensed last month, and now is on rollout phase. We have this strategy for our smart cities. Broadband gigabit connectivity and costs are being specifically taken care for very fast connectivity at very attractive cost. And also we have incentives supporting infrastructures like financial instruments, our tax incentives, our equity fund, our IP box. We are announcing a new startup visa scheme next month, which will be combined with our tech visa to science and technology professionals. I think that all I wanted to pass the message to the participants of this distinguished audience is that Cyprus is the geography to trust for your innovation initiatives, is the place to work and the place to live. That's all I wanted to share with you. If there are any questions, I am at your disposal to discuss.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Kokkinos. So we would suggest that the questions will be sent later on via frequently asked questions in order not to delay also the rest of the speakers, because I can see here that there are many questions addressed to you. So maybe we could send them to you.
If you could please consolidate all the questions, share it with my ministry, and then I will.
That will be lovely.
I will ensure that the answer is being provided.
And then we will circulate to the participants of this meeting.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
You.
Enjoy
it was
the rest
an honor.
of the day.
Thank you. Have a great rest of the day. Now